house just up here is the chap's just come back to it, but he left it. He was one of the last ones to come here, as I know. He's on leave. But anyway, it's here at the moment, 4 houses occupied. I've got 10 properties myself. As far as some blocks of land, there's 4 blocks out down there, the cafe, as it's got written on it.
Yep.
That was McRoberts and Miller Airlines, had the airstrip.
Oh,
The
yeah.
airstrip here is nearly 2 kilometres long.
Yep.
And that is the second longest in the state until they put it, I think it's about Meekatharra or Magnet or somewhere down there, there's a big airstrip in.
Oh, okay.
That became the second longest then. But our airstrip was, during the war years, that was the landing place.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's played a very big part in the history of the area, as far as I can see. And what, I was just fascinated by it, and the weather. That's the. Yeah.
So what about? Can you tell me more about when everybody cleared out? I mean, at one point it was thriving, and was it a fast? Was it overnight, or was it over weeks, months, years?
I don't know the first one. I think that a lot of people wouldn't have had jobs, so they were told to go, and they would have had to go because there was not much more here for it. See, the school teacher, she taught her 2 boys, and one was just, at the time she left here, he went to Tech, the eldest, and the youngest was about to, he was a year behind him. But her and her husband was an electrician here. A lot of people stayed on, and a lot of people also went because, I don't know, it's 1,500 or something here. When I came, there was about 53. For a long time, I think, was our number of population here.
So at one point there were 1,500 people here.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was big. The strip, as I said, 2 kilometres long, and that was there was photographs up in the hotel of Bunbury or Busselton, I'm not sure which. I think it's one of those places. They put the photograph of their hotel here in ours, and they were sending people up here. But when I started here, we were operating 6 holiday homes. There was no holiday homes here. There was a Backpackers, which is the yellow building over there.
Oh, right. Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
a very downgraded Backpackers, but
Yep.
there was a hotel. There was Fortescue Hotel and accommodation, and they put transportable buildings in my first years here into that. There's a Jumar Motel down the bottom end here, the caravan park. There was a Shell on one corner, BP on the other, where what they call Dock Holidays.
Mhm.
That was the airport shed, not what it is now. And there's 4 blocks of land. I own that part still, but there's service stations. There's people, electrician. Lived in a brick-clad house that's left over in that way. There's just the brick-clad house out by itself. It's where Gordon lived by himself all the years, I think, here, and he was here well and truly into very recently. But yeah, it was was not the biggest. It was the town of the Northwest. It was history. It was everything. And I've seen letters as correspondence, even in my time here. Correspondence of people writing just for other people here. But the couple that were managing the settlement were here right from the beginning, and they were managing and working in that management position all the time through. And Vera Ugolano and Fabio something, whatever, I can't think what his name was. He was Italian, they were Italian anyway. They had a funny office with secret passages and things. I've seen in South Melbourne, I've seen the same thing, so it must have been common. Where the shops were, they had a secret passage with cubby holes where they could hide their cash and all that in
Yeah,
it, and
yeah.
papers and all that. Well, they had all that sort of building out there, but they'd stayed there in that settlement right through the mining days, and I think it's nearly right from the beginning, and I'm not sure it's 53. But anyway, right through from the beginning of the mining days, they'd stayed. She was the secretary, and she knew, she's given me a box about this big, a base on it, and about so much of cuttings, only newspaper cuttings, little tiny things. And it's all about Wittenoom and the Corunna Downs during the war. Corunna Downs is where they, out here, gold mining area. It's the same era. It's during the war. They had area there where they hid the aircraft, and they set their aircraft out, and they got nets on them with spinifex, cover them,
Yeah, wow.
and that's during the war years. So my husband had lived in the northwest. He brought up in a home in Perth. He's curious about everything, and he got in to know these people. He used to go and help on the stations. He just did everything, builder and whatever. He worked for Hancock and Wright in Wittenoom, did the maintenance on the buildings. It didn't matter whether it was plumbing or what sort of maintenance was. He used to do all that, and he'd go around and help out at the stations. His days off, he'd go and see people and talk to them. And he had, and I put it in that text, he had an unfortunate problem. He stuttered very badly. But when I came on the scene with my 3 daughters, that went by the board, that just disappeared. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But he'd gone out to the stations, met these people, and he used to help them out with their tanks or their electrical things, whatever. A lot of the tables and chairs, these things, tables that chairs were sitting on. The mesh part, these were in the single men's quarters.
Oh, yeah.
And not the chairs. The material this is just ordinary piping. And the mesh part, the single men's quarters, was a room that was very little more than putting a single bed in and having enough room to put perhaps a pillow side on at the bottom, just be able to get in at the end of the bed, and you walked up the side of it, and you had a cupboard there, and out you had nails on the walls and that to hang everything up, whatever you had in your work clothes and that. But I brought immigrants in from overseas, and they worked here, and they had the best time of their lives.
Yep.
Yeah, it was really, at the time, it was pretty good, and I think they got free beer every night. They didn't pay for it. They just got whatever, a certain amount, and that was it. And all that. They were pretty well looked after and well fed. They had to be, but they worked hard, and they got paid for it. And the attitude between Australia and Canada, I know was one of bags, and I've heard people talk about it. Someone's hard hat's been sent over in a bag of asbestos and all this sort of thing. Yeah, from their work, one to the other and all that. But they made their own fun. That shed over near the house over the road there, that was a gun shed.
Oh, yeah.
Out there.
Yep.
The buildings, that shed was another building that came from out in the bush. They had piggery. They had killed their own cattle from the stations anyway. But they had their piggery. They did all the market garden area. There's an area in the gorge itself where it's not as big as the settlement where the housing was, but there's quite a bit of a cleared area, and they put a stone building in, and they had chooks in a big long pen. Market garden, they had a well there and all water and that, and plenty of water in the gorge, beautiful water.
Okay, so he's invited you over.
Yeah.
So you're in Melbourne, or in Victoria, sorry.
Yeah.
And so he's invited you over, and so how did you get here? So take me right back to the day you left and started to make your way here.
Oh, well, yeah, we packed up everything, sold the house and everything over there. Oh, no, first of all, we came over here, that's right, we came over. I drove over, stayed with an uncle that I hadn't really met before, but he's sort of an distant uncle in the family anyway, in Adelaide overnight. And then we hopped on the train. They put my vehicle on the train.
Yep.
Came over. He met us, this guy from Newman, went down and met us in Perth. And I'm not sure whether it was that trip or the next one when I moved over here. I don't know for sure, but anyway, I have come up one trip or the other. I think it was with Joe McMaster. He came up the coast, and at that time we came round to Port Hedland. No, we must have come round perhaps to Rovan, and the Rovan Road is the one that comes in just there.
Yep, that's right. Yep, I saw that one. Yep.
Yeah, and the continuation becomes Wittenoom Gorge.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, we came. No, we didn't. We came up the Meekatharra Road through the centre, and at that time that wasn't Oski Roadhouse, which is just out here. It was about 100 k's from here, along the hills at Roy Hill Station,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not right either. Roy Hill's here. I forget which station. Anyway, one of the Hancock stations. Anyway, we went to the station and we stopped off at some railway camps on the way coming through. But we came through, we had to come to the Newman railway line out here and then go back down to Newman that way, back down. And I went back to Newman that way and saw the countryside, and we'd called in the station people he knew of or they knew of him, and they were all friendly and have a cuppa and something to eat and, whatever. So, and of course that's more my way of living than being in particularly a mining town. And so anyway, we had our, I don't know how many days we had in Newman. We went, saw around, there's waterhole circuits. They don't promote it now, but the companies of all these mining towns, it's Paraburdoo, Tom Price, Newman, here, they used to put out the strip maps, a page, and it gave you where to go and the tracks into them and out, and there's water holes all through here, and yes, they were good. They used to go and drink at them, and there was a death here and a death there and that. So now they're not marked at all, but they're still there, and they should really be developed for tourism, and that's one of the projects. Whilst I was on council, I tried to get going with a new road put in and everything else, but I'm not going back to it, I don't think, unless someone else takes up gets the idea and takes it up completely.
Mm-hmm.
I'll support them, but I won't be the leader of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, we came up and we did a few of the couple of bush tracks out, and of course I love that. So we stayed in Newman, then we flew back home. I said I'd go home and think about it. So we get home, get up the next morning, white frost, really freezing cold. When I set up the fireplace that I had built and brought in some of the stump wood that I used to go and chop up and cut in, and sat in with the three daughters and myself sat in front of the fire, shivered like mad. And I said I looked at them and I said to him, I don't know about you girls and I don't really care, but we're going. I said, I cannot put up with this cold weather anymore. So anyway, I got on the phone and I said, right, we made up our mind. You got Jack Frost out? And he says, yeah, she'll come over. So anyway, we packed up and I drove EH Hold and brought a trailer, tandem trailer, and a bit of furnished stuff, but not much, and just our things over. And my uncle had a brother in Adelaide, so we were able to stay with him overnight, and we put the vehicle on the train and hopped on the train, and off we came across the Nullarbor and out at met in Perth by Joey McMaster, his name, Joey, by Joey in Perth, and we came up the coast and we came into Port Hedland, back down the railway line, and instead of him continuing the railway line down to Newman, he came in this road here into Wittenoom, and we stayed here. And then between here and Oski Roadhouse, there's a track that goes in. Was on the maps that we had for the national park, and it's right opposite where you turn left going out. Turn left to get Youngalina Community, and it's going the other way.
Yep, another one. Yeah, it's blocked off. It's got a thing
close,
note through at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a natural spring there, and you usually had to go through a little bit of water, but it was only a small pool. It wasn't deep or anything. And so basically the national parks took that off their maps and don't support that way in when it's coming off the main highway, coming in the other way. So, but we went that way in to have a look at Dales Gorge only, and I thought, Wittenoom Gorge. Oh yeah, this is the hills. This looks like the Dandenong Hills to me. In the distance, though, the hills, Dandenong Hills were there, and right in that direction from the house. Yeah, so basically.
So you felt a bit comfortable, a bit. You felt at home a little bit.
It was still a country area. It was workers. It was mining people, but the bulk of the workers then, they still had the settlement in Wittenoom Gorge. There's about a dozen houses in there, I think, and mainly single men's quarters is in there as well as here. And there was a double-storied hotel, the Dumar Motel was down the bottom. There's 3 or 4 service stations in this town, and it was all just go.
So, and that was when you first arrived. So tell me about when you first arrived into town. How many people would you say were living here when you first was it booming when you got here, or did you arrive and then it started booming later, or was it?
No, the booming of the mining and that had gone out. They'd closed it was still operating when we first came, but in a smaller degree. They've mined 2 places in Wittenoom Gorge, and if you go out, Wittenoom Gorge is a track following a creek that comes from Karajini National Park, and it comes down from the main collection of 4 gorges come together, and all that water comes down Wittenoom Gorge, and it comes down through the gorge. The top end, there's an area that like a football or a showgrounds, I suppose. They're the oval and a bit, parking area around, fair size. Flat area, and they'd built the housing area out there. So they had houses, they had the shop and the single men's quarters, and not much more there, I suppose. Or when I came, I don't know what. Well, they did have halls and that, and they'd use those for different purposes. But that's their accommodation for the main mining area. They mined that tunnel. The tunnels are only 3'6" high. And it's the only job where you got skin off your back from being. You had to bend over, and if you got too high, you were cut with the top of the tunnel. And they pushed the kibble cars in, pushed them by hand in, and crawled along and pushed them get back out with the ore on it. And I don't know how many years they did that, but that petered out. So then, from the flat area, and we call it the settlement where the housing was, they still had the housing there, but they came out Wittenoom Gorge, and part of the way out, there's up on the side of the hill. Now you look up to it, it's about halfway up the cliff side of the hill, and they went in, followed the same sort of tunnels up in there.
Yep.
And then I don't know when they started building the town, but they started to build the town here. But by the time I came here, there's a Fortescue Hotel, the Dumar Motel, there's 4 service stations here, and it was the biggest town in the northwest. Newman and Tom Price and all those mining towns that are here now didn't exist. Parabadoo, Tom Price.
Yeah, so it was just this was it.
This was it. There was Wim Creek, and Wim Creek. Near Wim Creek, there's gold mining, Roban, and there's gold mining up there on the coast. But they were at the coastal area, and they were looking at shipping and fishing and all that sort of thing. But anyway, the record to show that there's 3 mining leases between on the hill between Wittenoom Gorge and the next gorge over to the west, B Gorge, and when you go out the gorge, you can see all this crushed, it's batch-sized pieces of blue iron ore. The iron ore was crushed, and it was waste material. So they tipped it all down the hill, and they'd made a ledge on it, and they had the trucks and that working around that ledge, and the tunnel was quite high, about 2/3 of the way up the hill, I suppose. And they brought the ore out again by kibble cars, not so much any more than height than that. And they would get tunnelling in on that other lease, and the ore ran out. They'd almost come to breaking through into the next gorge to the west, which is B Gorge. So the ore was finished. It was about 1966. Basically, the war efforts were over. A lot of it, most of our ore was going to Canada, I think, anyway. And the demand was no longer there, so basically it folded. But at the same time, the records have been kept, geographical records of where the iron ore was and da. So from that, then you've got Tom Price, then Parabadoo mines starting up, and then the Hamersley Range, the same as where I'm talking about the Hamersley Range, the hills, where we're just on the flats, just looking at the beautiful cliffs. It's over 100 kilometres like this going along that range.
Yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful. And when we were over here, and actually I think it was when we were visiting, we came in from the railway line, and we had to come along the northern escarpment of this range, the same range as where I'm living now. And out there, you've got the hills that are covered with spinifex, which is just a round, prickly green thing.
Yep.
So you've got the brown rocks down, and the spinifex looks like nearly a greenish velvety finish.
Yes.
And it's still, the
beautiful,
contouring is still there. And then there's quite bit of a drop, and then there's more. There's not just the one, or the top part. There's just the capping, and that's it, and it's covered right through. But then it breaks down, and there's gorges come in, and the drainage comes down, and it's up. It's sort of flowing in different. It's like a table with a cloth and with folds in it around the bottom, and down the sides of the gorges, then you can see the rock, and that this spinifex still covers it. More recently, we've had fires. I don't think there's any trees. There was never many trees up right on the gorge. The cliff, they couldn't grow there. But down in those gorges, there was a little bit more vegetation. But that we're just at the bottom of it, just spreads out and goes back to the Fortescue River, which is very, very, very wide river, flat, very slow flowing, so it's not washed out. It's not a fast area at all. It's just the way it's all eroded down into shape, and it's just perfect, beautiful, beautiful blue sky. And if we have clouds, it will brilliant white. And usually it does rain too. And it rains properly when it does. Yep. But so it's.
So can you tell me more about the sort of the rise and the fall, I guess, of the asbestos mining? The start, and probably more to the point, the evacuation of the town. What happened there?
Oh well, naturally, when the mining, it started, as I said, up in the gorge, that petered out. Then this is asbestos, and then the other part. All that left is, and it's still there, they tipped it around the side of the hill, and they can drive trucks around on the ledge that they've left at the top of that, where it's all got pulled down over the hill itself, the rocks underneath, but the hill itself, and which is quite unique because it's the blue asbestos showing out on top of the red. It's quite red rock there. And green when we get the spinifex coming on, which is at the moment, a bit later on, and the buffel grass the same. It's green at first, and then it goes to seed and it becomes yellow, dry grass, and the hill, the spinifex comes up and goes to seed, and it sort of yellows down. It's got dead material in it showing through rather than the green stuff. But it's just that the rock formation is unique. It's so prominent and so it stands out because it's so different to all the other countryside Australia-wide that I've seen. And I don't know, you could go swimming, and we used to go out swimming to those pools. I don't know about what it's like now, because it's washed out. It has been, and I can go on to that. Up the gorge, they put the little winding road in. It was a sealed road, like the top, and they had concrete causeways, 12 creek crossings to get, and it just the road went from one side of the gorge to the other just to get through the bottom of the gorge. Since the mine closed in 1966, there hasn't been maintenance as such very much on that road. And I correct that, there has. They did the more recent maintenance because Hancock and Wright kept the settlement in Wittenoom Gorge going. They had managers out there. They were involved with the iron ore. Hancock took the iron ore mining has taken the place of the asbestos mining. So basically they still had their office in Wittenoom. They had tennis courts, public hall, everything out there, open air picture theatre and all that, in the gorge as well as in the town. But when we came here, there was managers at the settlement and a couple of other workers, possibly an electrician that had his accommodation in the gorge, but he did the work. He was employed in Hancock and Wright owned most of the houses still in Wittenoom, and he did the workers that were out living out there came in and did the work here. But still, instead of having houses in the town, they kept them going out there as well as in town. They had quite a few workers in town. My second husband, remarried here. He was there. Lucky. He was, he did the maintenance actually on the houses and the buildings in town. Hancock and Wright ended up owning within the town most of the community buildings, company buildings more. There was a hotel, motel, picture garden, theatre. All these things were operational during the mining days. Hancock and Wright took the ownership, freehold of those over, and as well as that, we had several. We had about 5 service stations as BPs, Shell, but all around. But workshops just out, and as you go out, there's a green shed as you go out Wittenoom Gorge. That was a workshop for one of the guys. That was during up until just very recently. The government's had one push at talking about buying people out some years ago, and then just another one more recently. They chose not to be bothered with me, and my daughter did show me the letter that was going around in the last